Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the family, and with great appreciation, we thank you so much for coming to this celebration of Jen's life. My name is Rusty Gabbard, and like all of you, I'm one of Jen's friends. I'm also an elder and a pastor at North Star Church, the community of faith that the Anderson family calls home. You know, this will be a very meaningful morning, I know. It might go a little bit long. We're anticipating maybe about an hour and a half, so just before we get going in here, there are bathrooms here. And you wouldn't offend us in any way if you need to do that. So they're to the left and to the right, so be advised. Well, we all knew this day was coming. In fact, Jen bravely helped us process her journey, blogging so prolifically along the way. But still, when the day arrives, it hits you like a jolt, doesn't it? And that's why it's important. It's important to have ceremonies, memorials, like this one we're having. They help groups of people make transition. Like a door on a hinge, they help us turn from one shared reality to the next. Perhaps this may feel a little bit different than an end-of-life ceremony that you've been to before, and that's intentional. You can see that many people are wearing turquoise around the room. That being Jen's favorite color, I'm told. I couldn't find a turquoise tie, but I wore another family color because I love red hair. Jen was nothing if not intentional. So the space has been provided for things that Jen loved the most: her faith, her family, and her friends. Some of it will be expressed in song, some of it will be expressed in person, and others will be captured in video. And at the end, I'm going to invite you to contribute your thoughts in a very unique way. In truth, I'm told that Jen wasn't so keen on funerals. I guess maybe no one is. I understand the importance of endings, but I just don't want to be made a fuss over, she said. Well, this isn't a fuss, Jen. This is just following your example to do today well. Jen passed on Sunday morning in the hospital. And when I heard it, I did what I bet many of you did. Paused, thought about the last time I saw her, the last time I spoke with her. Felt lots of things. And then I went to her website, and I reread many things. In the final lines of a fairly typical post, I found Jen's final words. I bet you read them too. They went like this. Brad called on his way through the parking lot tonight. He encouraged me to see the sunset simply because it was beautiful. And he knew I would want to know, and I'd want to see it. And then she writes, my life is beautiful. Her final words. Yes, Jen, your life is beautiful. And we are witnesses. There are two songs that are going to be sung by two dear friends, Andrea Buston and Chad Powers. Would you come on up, please? Andrea has been a beautiful comrade of passions and purpose over the years. She and Jen resonate deeply in similar ways. And Chad has been a worship leader at North Star who crafted some of the most impactful worship-filled moments that she'd ever experienced. It seemed right to have them both sing two songs uniquely important to Jen as we begin. One song, Living Hope. This was Jen's favorite worship song, and I'm told she was sitting with Marin, listening to that, looking at her, saying, I am so glad I'm listening to my favorite song with you. Second song, It Is Well With My Soul. The way Chad arranged this song to be sung one Sunday morning touched her so deeply that she points to it as an anchor moment in her life. Let's listen.
Do microphones well. Let's. Go ahead. Maybe. There you go. Just like we didn't plan it.
I feel like Jen would have really appreciated that moment. How great the chasm that lay between us. How high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name in
thou hast taught me to say, it is well, it is well with my soul. So many years ago, I just took a bunch of hymns and each week kind of explained a little bit of the backstory behind those, and Jen remarked that it was a super impactful moment in her life, and I'm 100% sure it wasn't my retelling of the story. It was the fact that she got a glimpse into the life of a person who wrote something in a very deep and dark, scary place, and no doubt, like all of us, wondered what kind of faith sings, what kind of faith soars when your feet are firmly planted on an earth that's difficult and in times decaying. And so the story goes, the man who wrote It Is Well was named Horatio Gates Spafford. He lived in the late 1800s, was a very successful attorney, held a lot of land. He had a wonderful wife and 5 children. And then one night, there was a fire that ripped through a lot of Chicago, and he literally lost everything overnight, all of his fortune. Story kind of like Job, a little bit before that, his son also passed away, and so in the chaos, he decided we all need to get away. We all need to take a trip. So his wife, and his 4 daughters prepared to take a ship from the United States over to England. Some last-minute business came up, and so he sent them along and said, I'm coming in just a few days. And so as they went across the Atlantic Ocean, their wooden ship collided with an iron hull ship, and the boat sank in 12 minutes. So Anna, his wife, sent back a message that simply said, saved alone, what shall I do? And so he got his affairs in order, and he got on a ship, and he started to sail across the sea. And right as they got to the place where that ship sank, the captain came out and said, "Sir, this is where your daughters are resting. It's 3 miles deep." And so Horatio was reminded of some words from his friend, the pastor D.L. Moody. When D.L. Moody said, "There will come a day when you hear that D.L. Moody of East Northfield, Illinois, has died. Don't you believe a word of it, for on that day I will be more alive than I've ever been." And so from that moment, from that place, he wrote these words. And so as we sing them again, think of the words that he used. When peace like a river attends my way. He had it all. He knew what peace and goodness was like, but also when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, you've taught me to say it's well. When peace like a river attended my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well, it is well with my soul, and it is well with my soul, it is well, it is well with my soul, Haste the day when my faith shall be sight. The clouds be rolled back as a scroll. The drum shall resound and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul.
When I was very young, I was at home in the house on Anvil Court, and my mother was on the phone to her mother in Australia. And whenever mom's on the phone to Australia, the general code of conduct was don't talk to her, be quiet, and behave. So generally, I probably obeyed because that's the kind of kid that I was. But in this instance, I went up to her and I said, we're thirsty, because I always spoke on behalf of myself and of Kate. So mom goes over to the fridge while on the phone, be quiet, I'm getting you a drink. And goes to the fridge, she gets a pitcher out, she gets out 2 sippy cups, she pours us sippy cups, she puts lids on, she hands them to us, and we drink it, and we're like, we don't like this. And she's like, stop, you just asked for a drink, and I got you a drink, now drink it, I'm on the phone. So she gives us the stink eye major, and Kate and I stand there and we drink our juice that we are not very excited about, and we finish our cups, and then we go on and we play. Mom continues her conversation to Australia, but in the background, in the bedrooms, outside the reach of the phone cord, we are having terrible behavior, and she is not impressed, and she's angry. I'm pretty sure Kate is doing something terrible, like stomping in the toilet with her new school shoes on, and I don't know what I was doing, but it wasn't much better. So fast forward then to that night. It's a Saturday. Mom and Dad are having friends over to play cards, as they often did, and Dad goes to the fridge to get out the pitcher, and he is like, Roslyn, how many Long Island iced teas did you have today? And Mom sees the pitcher, and she hears him say Long Island iced tea, and she goes, oh! And she realizes that she had given us sippy cups, which was probably like 4 to 5 shots of alcohol, and there was no mixer in it. It was straight alcohol. So that's why we were behaving like banshees, because we were wasted. And that's the story of my first drink.
Oh my. Ladies and gentlemen, Parents of the Year. This is Norv and Roz, Mathie. And now things make a lot more sense, don't they? We'll be showing a brief clip of Jen before each one of the sharing times. But Norv, why don't you come and share your thoughts with us, please? Here you go.
That was not our proudest moment. So, everyone that's here spent some time with Jen, was touched by Jen. And I would be willing to bet that everyone here came away from any encounter with Jen feeling better about themselves than they felt about her. She was really good at that. Imagine how privileged and proud and just plain lucky that Roz and I are to have been there from the very beginning. I credit Roz with all the great things about Jen. She was the one that properly raised the girls. She gets all that credit. I was the fun dad, so I didn't have to do the discipline too often, but when I did, when Roz would say, you need to go talk to the girls, I would go in, and the three of them would be there, because Roz made them be there. And I'd look at Jen, and I'd look at Megan, and I'd look at Kate, and Jen and Megan would be in tears instantly. You didn't need to say a word. They just gave them the look, and they were in tears. Kate was usually dancing around the room saying, "Okay, Dad." Picking daisies somewhere. She just wasn't too worried about whatever discipline I was handing out. But it was really a pleasure bringing up all three girls. The cops never came a-calling, which is more than I can say for my mom and dad. So, things that Jen and I and Roz, we all graduated from Miami, and many of our closest friends came from those days. We were there at different generations. Jen actually figured out what Miami was all about and went to class. I didn't figure that part out too well. We had a saying between us: work hard, play hard, and we said that often. And I think I'm a great salesman, because all her life she thought I worked hard. So, but I did get the second part right, the play hard. Our goal was always education, independence, and happiness. Check, check, and check. We're most relieved that she has received now happiness ever after. No more pain, no more suffering, just soaring from this point forward. Thank you, Jen, for all the time you saved for us on Earth. We're looking forward now to spending 24/7 with you. For Roz, that's business as usual. For me, I have to be on my best behavior.
When your daughters become your best friends, you know you've done something right. Jen made me into a better person. Long before do today well, she expected the best from herself. Therefore, to be in her circle, you had to do your best. We always had fun stuff to do, and getting it on the calendar appealed to all our family and friends. Whether it was a volleyball game, deck time, travel, board game, or a simple walk, fun was the goal. I will miss my friend Jen. In her honor, invite me to do fun stuff with you for the rest of my life. We both love words and writing. I leave you with the words of Sojourner Truth. I am not going to die. I am going home like a shooting star. Thank you.
The teachers in college were my first history teachers who were storytellers. So I found my history classes fascinating because I would just walk in and I would listen to these experts tell these really interesting stories, and I was just kind of enamored with the idea of storytelling. And then ultimately when I taught in my classrooms, I like to think that the days that I lectured my kids just watched me as I was telling stories. And one of my favorite teaching memories is that I would just walk up and down the rows of my classroom between the desks and just watching the eyes of the kids follow me, that I had captivated the attention of 13 and 14 and 15-year-olds as a teacher, is something that still makes me smile. I just really enjoyed that kind of wow.
Love to invite Katie and Megan to the up front. Sisters. Siblings know the truth. Maybe we'll hear some.
Hey there. So Jen called me Meggie Baby, and this is Glow Baby, Gloria, and she's kind of like my talking pillow right now. The rule is you don't cry if you're holding Gloria. So I'm Jen's littlest sister, and a special thing about sisters is that we are the keepers of each other's stories. It just so happens that one of my earliest, clearest memories of Jen is a pretty traumatic story. So here we go. This was the summer before I began kindergarten, and Jen would have been a 5th grader. And we went on a family vacation to Mammoth Cave in Kentucky. And to get to the cave, we had to ride a school bus, an old school bus, from the lodge to the cave. And this was a big deal because it was my first ever bus ride. And this was much anticipated. I grew up watching Jen and Katie get on and off the bus. So excited. I sit in the back of the bus with Jen on the little seat, which you know is the coolest seat, right? And I'm sitting next to my very cool big sister. And she said, Meggie, you need to sit with your back flat against the back of the seat. This is the rule. And so I scoot way back, and I'm sitting up straight, riding the bus like a big kid. And she says, Meggie, you also need to have your feet flat on the floor. This is the rule. And I was really little, so I scoot way forward, and I pretty much had to stand up to have my feet flat on the floor. And she said, Meggie, if you want to go ride the bus to kindergarten, you have to do both at the same time. And Jen laughed and laughed as I tried so hard to do both at the same time, and I would get one shoulder blade and one toe maybe on the back of the seat and the floor, and I was so sad because I would never get to ride the bus, and I would never get to go to kindergarten, and I would never learn to read. And you guys all thought that Jen was so nice. Thanks to Jen, I also believed for an embarrassing number of years that our friend Bill, that his name was short for Billiam. And thanks to Jen, for a while I believed that I was adopted from China. She taught me all kinds of things, and you guys know that she is gifted at explaining things with absolute authority. And I just always believed her. But thankfully, at some point, Jen learned to use her powers for good. Personal growth is a thing, even for Jen. And as grown-ups, Jen and Katie are my closest confidants. Jen's authority never went away, and she has been my teacher and my advocate through all of my stories. Gloria, do your baby work. After cancer, there was a time when I couldn't bring my average not cancer problems to my family, and it was really lonely. And Jen said that it was important for her to be needed. And so I was like, okay, I got this. I need my big sister. My sisters, they know me more wholly and truthfully than anybody. And as the keeper of my stories and my history and my worries and my fears and my victories and my bad decisions, Jen knows the absolute worst of me. And so somehow she sees the best in me. And she helps me see the best in myself. I am so proud to be Jen's sister, and I love her beautiful story. And I know that she's proud of Katie and I. So, thank you. Here we go, Katie.
So when I was first starting to speak, Jen is only 14 months older than I am. So I didn't have any personal pronouns. So when I was ready to play, I said, "We want to play." When I wanted some juice, "We want some juice," or Long Island iced tea. But Jen has always spoke for me and been my advocate. And I know if you've spent any quality time with Jen that she's just a word ninja. That, I call Jen up. My plan is to go over the logistics for dinner. And 5 minutes later, Jen has pulled all of my problems out of me and we're hashing it out and she's helping me. So she sneaks past your defenses. And Jen has always been the rock star of the coping skills world. She's just amazing. And one of my coping skills is dance. So I'm just gonna do a quick, silly, interpretive dance to celebrate Jen, because Jen has the words, but I have the moves, so.
Andre and Chad, would you come back up, please? That's great. Dab the eyes, friends, dab the eyes. Proves that you did life deeply. I'm going to play another song, meaningful to Jen and Brad both. It was played at their wedding.
I've heard it said that a man would climb a mountain just to be with the one he loved. How many times has he broken that promise? It has never been done.
I've never climbed the highest mountain, but I walked the hill of Calvary just to be with you. I would do anything. There's no price I would not pay. No, just to be with you, I would give anything. I would give my life away.
I've heard it said that a man would swim the oceans just to be with the one he loves. All of those dreams are an empty emotion. It can never be done.
Well, I've never swam the deepest ocean, but I walked upon the raging sea. And just to be with you, I would do anything. There's no price I would not pay. No, just to be with you, I would give anything. I would give my life away. And I know that you don't understand the fullness of my love, how I died upon the cross for your sin. And I know that you don't realize how much that I give you, but I promise that I would do it all again. Just to be with you, I've done everything. There's no price I did not pay. No, just to be with you, I gave everything. Yes, I gave my life away. Yeah, I gave my life away. Oh yeah, I gave my life away. Just to be with you, oh, just to be with you, just to be with you, oh, just to be with you.
I have the honor of introducing myself. But to introduce myself is to share a core part of Jen. So I'm Kristen Stegman, and I am one of the lives that Jen poured into. When I was 16, I was in a Bible study with 2 guy leaders who were awesome. And in that study were a couple of guys and a whole lot of girls, and we needed a girl leader. Meanwhile, Jen was in college and experienced a series of closed doors and a very strong pull to lead a Bible study in Lakota. And she eventually was matched with us, and we had our Bible study leader. But in true Jen intentional ways, she did not let us go. Through college and adulthood, she mentored us. She would meet with us at Bob Evans for bottomless hot chocolate. And I was delighted to share about my life. I was so tickled to hear about her life. And all of it, meanwhile, sharing that deep God connection. If I could use a hand sign to represent how Jen mentored us, it would include listening and applause and building up. So much of my life is defined by the way that she listened, she heard, and she understood, the way that she cheered me on, my weaknesses and my strengths and who I am, and the way that she built me up, not to do more things or take on more roles, but to be more of who I was authentically made to be. With Marin's permission, my introduction goes one step further into Jen's heart. Jen, as you know, can be very persuasive. And a few years ago, with a strong determination and a lot of gentleness, she pulled my family into her circle, into her church, her community, her friends, and her family. And for that, I am deeply thankful. Without realizing what was happening, I found that my background as a middle school teacher served perfectly in helping to start up a junior high program at our budding campus plant. And without manufacturing anything, this God and life legacy that Jen had so carefully cultivated in her life then turned to include Marin. So I get to be Marin's Bible study leader. Over the years, legacy was a deeply important concept to Jen. So it was one of Jen's deep joys to know that her work continued through all of us and in that precious loop. And a cool addition to that is this summer, when Marin was looking through her kitchen cabinets, she saw a Bob Evans mug that I had gifted to Jen. And by the end of her conversation with Jen, they had decided that we had to go to Bob Evans together because the whipped cream is like 3 inches high and they just keep refilling it. And but at the time, we were busy starting this church campus. But Marin also can be persuasive and persistent, as can you, Greta. And every time I saw Marin, she kept saying, when are we going to have Bible study next? And when are we going to Bob Evans? So without knowing the future, we were able to have our first very meaningful time at Bob Evans. And I'm so thankful for your persistence, Marin, because the legacy lives on. I get to read a very special verse to Jen and Brad. It was read at their wedding, and it was their go-to verse their whole life. Anytime they needed to recenter, they came back to this verse. So, without further ado, Hebrews 12, 1-2. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. So that's the end of my part. And I have the very deep honor of getting to read Marin's memory of her mom. I have 4 kids, and that's an honor, but this rivals that. So these are all Marin's words, and I'm just the voice. All right. There is no one like my mom. She was very supportive of me when I did something great, but even more when I did something wrong. Whenever I mess up or hurt someone's feelings in some way, my mom was always there for me. She always made me feel better, no matter what happened. On some occasions, the problems I brought to her were that I forgot something and I felt really bad about it. Sometimes she would cheer me up by explaining to me that what I forgot doesn't even matter. Sometimes, though, we would start talking about the times that she really messed up. One story we would talk about is this. 2 years ago, 2 of my friends and I were playing on the same club volleyball team. They both lived nearby, so we carpooled to every practice. One day, my mom was standing in our kitchen and making us some baked potatoes for dinner, and Greta was doing something quietly to entertain herself. So, as my mom was putting her potatoes in the oven, she was thinking, I thought Marin would be home from practice by now. Meanwhile, my 2 friends and I had been waiting by the front doors of the gym for nearly an hour and a half, trying to figure out whose mom was supposed to be picking us up. None of our moms had told us who would be picking us up. Also, it had been snowing all day, and of course, I had forgotten my coat that day, so standing right next to the door was just a little bit cold. At home, my mom was trying to remember who was picking us up, and it was then that she realized it was her turn to do the pickup. So she quickly ran down the hallway and threw on her coat. She yelled upstairs to Greta to get in the car, and she ran into the garage to start the car. About 10 seconds later, Greta was in the car with no shoes, no coat, and wearing her pajamas. They came to pick us up, and on the way, my mom gave phone calls to my friends' moms, telling them what happened and that we would be home soon. One of my friends also lived in the neighborhood, and when my mom called her mom, she sent her to our house to turn off the oven. Because in her rush, she forgot to turn it off and did not want our house to burn down. She gave many apologies to us, and we promptly went to Wendy's to get Frosties as a peace offering. This is just one memory of mine with my mom. I am going to miss her a lot. Even though she won't be late to pick me up from practice anymore, I know she will be cheering me on at every game.
Oh, it's so good to see all of you. On our wedding day, I thought for sure Jen was going to be a total wreck. Walking down the aisle on her dad's arm. No way. She was like total cool cucumber. If you know Jen, when it's showtime, she is showtime, right? I am the one that's up front. I got windshield wipers going, snot's flowing, like the whole thing. And, seeing her walk down the aisle, she's so beautiful. And much like today, just seeing all of our people in one place, just couldn't help but bring me to tears. And I feel a lot like that today. Friends, I am so humbled. I can speak for all of us that we could all be gathered here today in community. If there's one thing that is absolutely Jen, is intentional relationship and community. Hey, can I get a show of hands? Anyone that has been impacted by Jen? Can I get a show of hands? That's kind of an easy question. Okay, would you mind keeping them up? Keep them up. I kind of feel like we're in the position of giving a high five, right? High five to Jen. High five to Jen. We do a lot of high fiving in our house. I have to be honest, I am totally overwhelmed to try to pluck out one or two stories. How do you do that? It's just so inadequate. What I can tell you is that our journey has been full. It has been accelerated. It has simplified our priorities. It's strengthened our community. And it has absolutely multiplied our living. We have lived fully. Jen said one of the last couple days that every dream that she's ever had has come true. I can say the same thing. It's like all gravy from here. I think today I'd rather just talk on Jen's essence. What I learned from Jen is just deeply, fundamentally changed who I am forever. I'm a much better man for having been with Jen. I think if there are 4 words, if I had only 4 words to describe Jen, it would be fiercely intentional, loving, and totally fun. I guess that was 5 words. All right. I want to touch on fiercely intentional. There is just, of everyone I've ever met, Jen is the most fiercely intentional person I've ever met. And that is what is fundamentally has changed me forever. I hope that I can't help but continue that, having known her. There's, as you guys know, she's liked to write, and she has written a couple of blogs from time to time. One from this last May, I think, helps to capture just a little bit of her fierce intentionality. I'm going to read it for you now. I feel and I know has been my latest prompt with the girls when I want to hear something meaningful about their days. I feel addresses the feelings they are having. I know, however, requires them to combat the feeling with the truth that relates to what they are feeling. Depending on the height and depth of the emotions at play, it can take a long time to cycle from the I feel to the I know statements. First, I help them to accept and validate the emotion. It's real. Then we almost always have some level of chatter or sarcasm or jokes kind of in the middle, because laughter helps to break the tension of negative emotions. I think it is really important to acknowledge and validate emotions, but generally not a good idea to live out from emotions. I know for myself, and because of my situation, I would be a wholly hot mess if I lived out of my emotions. Instead, I'm in the long habit of living out of my I know statements, the truths and logic that I can self-speak are much more positive and even keel than my emotions. My energy, effort, brain power either feeds the feels or the knows. One is healthy for me, and the other generally is not. Teaching my girls this practice of cycling through and doing the work to move from emotions to truth statements will serve them well as a practical tool in life. A friend recently asked me what I thought about fear. I think I surprised her when I said, fear is real, with enthusiasm. There are lots of times where I feel afraid. I also accept and validate my fear. It is not irrational nor false. Whoa, she said. I think I was expecting a blog Jen answer, a neat little package to say something like, there is no such thing as fear, blah, 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 blah. I laughed and said, no. With regard to fear and other negative feelings, I tend to play it all the way out. If fear and death are on the left side of the spectrum, then life in heaven is on the right side of the spectrum. I feel afraid, but I know I have hope. The peace comes in remembering what I know to be true. It's not the fear that goes away. It is that there is a framework for my brain to follow so that it doesn't get stuck in the emotion of fear. I spend my days with my I know truth statements running through my head. Thus, I'm nearly always in a positive mood. Amen? Anybody hear that? Right? And that helps me live as the best Jen. Do today well. This personal work to be the best version of oneself, understanding the truths that are core. This personal work is the foundation of Do Today Well. And Jen, always the teacher, right? And now she is realizing her ultimate hope. I'm fascinated. I'm curious. I wonder, Jen, what do you see now? What are you feeling now? What does your heart feel, right? What does it feel like to sing and dance in complete freedom? Freedom away from all the stuff that we have here, right? I can only imagine. My words are just so inadequate, but I know that I love Jen very deeply. I know that she loves me, she loves our girls, she loves our family, all of us, very deeply. Nothing else needs to be said.
When we were first married, I think the first wedding we probably went to was your friend Gary Kaye, who was from Zimbabwe. And I had never met any of these people before, but you knew them well. And we showed up to this wedding and nothing was happening and people were just like strolling around and there was probably only 10 people in attendance at that point. And so you and I sit down and we're just kind of sitting in a pew waiting for things to happen. So things progress. Another hour later, things look like they're starting to happen. And so this wedding procession starts. As they start saying vows and, you know, the pastor says, everybody welcome, you know, we're excited for you to be here with us today. And the entire crowd erupts with like this. And Brad and I are like, what in the heck is going on? So now, the way that Brad and I have translated that into our relationship is that whenever we're cheerful or happy or messing with each other, especially on the phone, I like to answer the phone when he calls me by going, boop. And then I always know that if he goes boop back, that he is not in a meeting and he is free to talk. And generally it means he's on his way home, which always makes me happy. So for us, it's been like this self-perpetuating happy cycle brought to us by our Zimbabwean wedding friends.
Mary, James, would you come up, please? Lifelong friends bring all kinds of richness to life. I think it was Helen Keller that said, I would much rather walk with a friend in the dark than walk alone in the light. Well, I'd say that the Andersons have been fortunate to have an army of friends walking with them, both in the light and the dark. And many of them have been joined at the hip, many of you, for decades, which I find kind of a rare thing. So we asked a few of them to come and share a little bit about what they remember, what they have to say. Mary, why don't you start?
Thank you. Oh, it is just so good to see everybody's faces. I was trying to keep myself together and then I see all your faces, but it's just, there's so much love. My name's Mary, and I'm one of Jen's friends. I think we've known each other since 1998. I heard of Jen before I met Jen. It was the winter of my senior year of high school, and I had invited some friends to come over to my house Friday night, and they were like, oh, we can't, we're going to Jen Mathie's house. And I was like, what, who's Jen? Who's Jen? She's a party thief, that's who she is. So obviously, we made the only logical decision, and we joined forces. And so we spent many Friday and Saturday nights at the Mathie house in the basement, and we always giggled when Norv would come downstairs and give us a hearty, hey, party animals. It was our favorite. So fast forward a little bit, summer before freshman year of college, I still didn't know Jen that well, but we figured like, oh, we're both going to Miami, we should hang out. And we were trying to be cool and not awkward, and so we decided, let's go rollerblading around downtown Cincinnati. Yeah, this is gonna be awesome. And Jen's always up for an adventure, as you guys know. So we get down there, and we are so cool with our inline skates, and we're ready to go, and we're going around Cincinnati, and we go over to Newport, and then when we're coming back from Kentucky over the Purple People Bridge, we're coming, it's uphill, and then you're going downhill, and we're picking up speed, and we're just having a blast. And then this little piece of glass gets stuck in the wheels of Jen's skate. So her skate stops, and her body doesn't. So she did this, and Jen, how she likes to dance, not. She did this really big spin move, and then she caught herself with her forehead. And I heard a loud crack, and that wasn't a good sound. And I whirl around, and I'm like, oh, friend that I barely know. Huge lump has already formed on the front of her forehead, and blood is dripping, and she's obviously dizzy, and I'm like, uh-oh, it's not good. So she wasn't really excited to go into the dorm move-in day with the huge lump on her head, but she does look at the bright side, so she made it through. So later at Miami, the two of us, first semester, before we really met a lot of people, we'd be wandering around campus together, like, why haven't we found our niche of awesomeness? We're fun girls. We're fun girls. And that's what we would say. That became our motto of confidence. And as everyone has been saying, she just spoke goodness and truth. She called out the things. She called out characteristics like thriving, joyful, strong, capable, worthy. And she charged us to become the best versions of ourselves. I think she learned that skill from Roz, because I know that Roz would tell her as a little girl, you make good decisions. And I've heard Jen say to her girls, you make good decisions. So those affirmations are so wonderful. Jen was a very wise and intentional mom. She always seemed to know when to push her children, when to pull them close. She just always knew the right thing to do. It was a beautiful thing to watch and listen to her parenting. Our mom friends, we'd kind of look to her for advice or help in situations. And if we had a challenging scenario, we would ask Jen what to do. And she would have this brilliant, logical, perfectly worded explanation of what to do that would make any child just obey immediately. So we would think, all right, I got this. We would try to emulate her magical Mary Poppins ways and crash and burn every time. It just wasn't the same. So a few times we were like, Jen, could you just talk to my kid for me? And she did. She really did. When it comes to momming, it wasn't about perfection with Jen. She celebrated the goof-ups also. And I would text her often with some kind of big, like, I forgot to get my kids from the bus, or, you know, that situation. And so she would text me back and she would say, your mom cape, your super mom cape is so shiny and it's flying high. So we had the joke about the super mom cape with all of our goof-ups. My daughter Annabelle reminisced about how Jen would cook them grilled cheese, and if one side got too dark, she would just put that side downwards on the plate and like hope the kids didn't notice. Jen was our family's tooth puller, and I'm not kidding, many teeth, volleyball and water ski coach, and a trusted advisor. My daughters view Jen as a sort of second mom. Whenever they need a confidant or an additional voice of reason, they go to her. And also for fun traditions like face paint on Halloween and sneaking an elf on the shelf into our house. Jen was a phenomenal storyteller, which we have gotten to experience in the videos. One of my favorite stories that she would tell is her and Brad's first fight. They were engaged, and they couldn't decide if they really needed a duvet cover. Or maybe it was a bidet cover. Duvet, bidet, I don't really remember. But the tears were streaming down our face and our abs were sore because we were laughing so hard from her storytelling skills. Jen's gift to people, and part of her legacy that I want to carry forward, is put your rally cap on for the good stuff. Throughout her entire life and cancer journey, she was intentional about scheduling her energy for the meaningful moments. There's one particular memory where we were at Norris Lake and the water was freezing. And I don't like cold water, and Jen didn't either. But she did not hesitate. She dove in head first and she water skied with her kids. And she was woohooing and fist bumping the whole entire way. Jen was an investor in people, a believer in people, and a builder of people. She was adamant that the best way to do today well, is to discover what specific gifts have been entrusted to you. Celebrate, embrace, and use those gifts. To Brad, Marin, and Greta, I know that Jen's absence leaves a gaping hole in your hearts and in your home. And I believe that your family will be like the trees mentioned in Jeremiah 17:8. They are like trees planted along a riverbank with roots that reach deep into the water. They do not fear when the heat comes. Their leaves are always green. Jen has planted many seeds of goodness, strength, wisdom, and wonder in each of your hearts. And I see those seeds are sprouting already, and they will reach their full splendor, and you guys will carry her with you through all of your days. Thank you.
I am just so honored as I look out at all the turquoise in this crowd, so thank you for investing in shooting Amazon Prime in order to get your turquoise in time. Yeah. So I met Jen late junior high, freshman year of high school. We became very fast friends, and we just started to grow up together, and I had the incredible privilege of getting to lead Jen to Christ when we were in high school. And I laugh every time I say that I led Jen to Christ, because leading Jen anywhere is kind of not a thing, right? I mean, she knew where she was going. Really, the way to describe it is that she led me in the process of leading her to Christ. Because I was a new believer, I didn't know what I was doing. We went and we met at Keener Park right down here, down the road, and we sat on a picnic table. And I gave her a Bible that I bought her, and I asked her, do you have any questions? Hoping she would say no, because I didn't have any answers. And she said, no, let's do this. And so I stumblingly led her through the prayer to invite Jesus into her life. And from that point on, she led me. She led me in what it looks like to tenaciously follow Jesus. She led me in what it looks like to fearlessly and intentionally invest yourself in the lives of others and do deep relationship. Jen had a supernatural vision to be able to see in others what God had uniquely placed in them and call it out. She would challenge me. I'm sure she challenged all of you at some point or another, but she challenged me constantly, starting in high school and going into college and beyond. And when I would phone it in, when I was gonna just not show up and not do the work and not really be me, she would come back with, "Schmoogada what? Schmoogada what?" That was her comment. I heard it a million times, so I'm just that thick-headed, I guess. But schmoogada what? It was her way of saying, are you kidding me? Do you not know who you are? Do you not know what God has placed in you and what he is calling you to? Do you not know? Schmoogada what? Show up. And that is who she was. She was a challenger. In fact, she challenged so often that Amy and I would joke when the phone would ring and we'd see it was her, we'd go, oh gosh. What's she going to challenge us with now? You know, there's always something. But it wasn't that those challenges made us stronger. It was just that Jen was such an incredibly bright light that she was able to shine through all the darkness and all the junk that was in us and reveal the strength that was already there. Amy had asked me to share a story about a phone call that she had with Jen a couple years ago. Jen was having a really bad day. She was really low, was really struggling. And she called Amy, and Amy attempted to Jen, right? I think you know what I mean. She was cheering for her and pumping her up and challenging her to go forth and be strong, and it just didn't work. It didn't land. It was super awkward. And as Amy and Jen kind of processed that later on, Jen was able to put her finger on it. She said, I didn't call you because I needed to be Jenned. I called you because I needed to be Amy'd. I needed you to love me the way that God has specifically gifted you to love people. That's what I needed. And that's what Jen meant by do today well. It's not about showing up to be the best thing that you're not. It's not about showing up and being the best, climbing the highest, accomplishing the most. A lot of times it's about showing up in your worst and inviting people in. It's about doing the hard work that allows us to have the courage to drop the facades and drop the mask and just be our true, authentic self. And that's how Jen lived every day. Soon after Brad and Jen got married, Amy and I had a conversation with them. We sat down, we looked each other eye to eye, and we said, we are going to do life together. We will be your people, you will be our people. We are going to do the things. And we did vacations and traditions and all of the shared experiences together. We call ourselves the Anderhoffs because that is who we are. And we were willing to be known by each other in a way that was much deeper than even other relationships that we have. And Jen led the charge in that because she was fearless. Those kinds of relationships are risky. It's really risky to be that vulnerable and to be willing to be that known. It's risky to invest yourself so deeply in other people that you have no choice but to sit in their pain with them rather than watch from a safe distance. That is how Jen lived her life. That is how Team Anderhoff does relationship because that's how we learned it from her. And I want you to know it's worth it. All of it. It's worth it. All the hard, all the pain, all the ugly. It's so worth it. All the agony that we have. We have lost this beautiful woman so soon is so more than made up for all the beauty that we gained, the life that we got to live with her. It's so worth it. And I think Jen would challenge us today, because that's what she did. I feel like there's a schmuggity what coming. She would challenge us to be risky. She would challenge us that it's worth it to take the risk, to be vulnerable, to show up, to risk being hurt, to risk being embarrassed, to invest our lives in others, to be in our human messiness and love others in their human messiness and just be in that mess together. That's not just how you do today well. That's how you do life well, and that's how Jen did life. And we are all so much better for it. Thank you.
The first fight that I remember that we had was when we were all sitting down and talking about what our first semester was going to look like when we all moved in. Like, we're going to have to share household supplies. We're going to have to, take take turns who's going to purchase the milk and who's going to purchase the tissues and who's going to purchase the Windex. And, as college students, how much Windex are we really going to go through? It's not really a situation. But then somebody brought up, well, what about toilet paper? We need Charmin. That is my standard. I cannot have anything other than Charmin. And somebody else is like, well, that's so expensive. I've never had Charmin in my life. I'm not going to start paying for Charmin in college. And so the biggest fight that I think the 7 of us ever had was before we ever moved in together. And it was over toilet paper.
All right, a few more friends. Abby, would you come up, please? Lifelong friends often happen around college times. And Jen had a roommate in Miami, was privy to many of the women's Bible studies that went on around her life. And then followed after Abby is the Australian contingent. You do recognize we have an Australian contingent here. And speaking for the Powers family will be Eloise. So Abby, come share with us, please.
Hey, y'all. My husband and I bought a house in Texas a week ago, so I felt the need to say that. Mostly because Jen was adamant that we needed to buy the house down the street from her that was for sale and regularly sent us pictures from the MLS listing, so just felt the need. My name is Abby. Some know me as Abby Tall. Jen's dad calls me Party Animal. Hey, Party Animal. But Jen called me Forbes. That was my maiden name. I was one of Jen's 6 college roommates, along with Kim, Eva, Rachel, Mary, and Abby Short. That is actually her maiden name. It worked out. So I'm taller. On behalf of the Pleiades girls, I would like to share some of our Jen with you. Jen was the wise one in our group, the fun one, the one who spoke truth into us. She is the one who called us out on our nonsense. I'm the one with no filter, so I'm not sure why I'm up here, but we'll see. In college, Jen owned the power nap. She used to take a nap between classes and say, "Wake me up by 2 p.m. and you would hear a collective moan from us. Because waking up Jen took skill, stealth moves, quick reflexes, and some self-defense. Calling her name to wake her up was not sufficient. It took poking and prodding. But the trick was that you didn't know which poke or which prod would cause her entire body to flail and convulse, and every inch of her long limbs. There were bruises on our part, not hers. Jen loved trips. She felt like fun Jen on trips. Jen's trips involved adventure, driving in a boat through an intense monsoon, flying to Australia to surprise her family, skipping class. She did skip class once in a while. Sorry, ruining it. Skipping class to drive down to St. Louis, back and down in one day to watch Miami University in the Sweet 16 basketball tournament. After adventures, Jen would say something like, "I felt most myself today." One of her last big trips was to attend my wedding in Texas a few months ago. And boy, did she rally. I knew she wasn't feeling great, but that wasn't going to get in her way. Jen was in the bridal suite with me in the waiting period before walking down the aisle. In her Jen way, she brought a sense of calm and peace to the space. I almost forgot to put on my veil. She took care of it. She put it on for me. She took my hand. She had me sit down. She got me some water, found a granola bar from I don't know where, and told me to hydrate because I was getting jittery. Not from cold feet, but because I had been outside taking pictures in a mild 98 degrees. Who gets married in July in Texas? I do. I used to live in the desert of California, and Jen had a unique way of sending me mail. On the outside of the envelope, she would address the mail. In place of the city, she would say, "Blistering hellhole, comma, California." And it made it. Anyway, I digress. At my wedding, Jen dug deep and brought her fun Jen self. It was important to her. She was the last one on the dance floor that night and closed the place down with us. She was so happy for me, and she wanted to celebrate every moment. She rallied. She was the only one that night to get my husband on the dance floor. I have no idea what she said to him, but he owned that Taylor Swift song. That was one of my husband Brian's favorite moments of our wedding. The last part of my talk is specifically for Marin and Greta, who look beautiful today. Yes. So, Marin is actually wearing the dress that her mom wore to my wedding, which I absolutely love, and Greta in her yellow, love, sparkle. But for Marin and Greta, this is from Pleiades, and what we can impart on you, and I think you've already been practicing this, is you surround yourself with a strong team. Strong is being steadfast, compassionate, courageous, and loving. Strength always comes from a place of love. There was an unsaid rule among the roommates that future suitors had to pass the roommate test. We would meet them, we would measure them up. Potential in-laws, meeting them was cake compared to meeting us. Marin and Greta, I remember meeting your dad for the first time. I had heard great things, but I wasn't so sure. He was an outsider. He was from Wisconsin. But after talking to Brad for about 2 minutes, I knew he passed the test. He loved the Jenness, and he loved the fierce women that came with her. The 7 of us from college have been together and supported one another through trials, losses, grief, breakups, marriage, blessings. The thing is that strength doesn't happen in isolation. We need a team who will cheer for us, who will pray for us. So, Greta and Marin, there are so many amazingly strong people in this room. Aunt Kate, Aunt Meg, Nana Roz, Granddad Norv, Grandma and Grandpa Anderson, Annabelle, Maddie, all of your friends. Oh, and Australia's in the house, the continent of Australia. And we have your mom's strong friends who are on your team. The Pleiades girls are praying for you, and we are praying for strength. Jen called out the strength in each of us when we couldn't see it or believe it for ourselves. Pleiades was the name of our house in college. That's what you do at Miami University. You name your house. It's weird, we just do it. Pleiades is the constellation of the seven sisters. 20 years ago, we had no idea the fountain of strength that would come from Pleiades, our seven sisters. Pleiades, that constellation, is among the nearest star clusters to Earth. And while I can't see her, I know that Jen is near. So Miss Marin and Miss Greta, Kim and Eva just handed you some artwork of the constellation Pleiades, and that's to remind you of two things. First, intentionally surround yourself with a strong team. And second, looking toward heaven is always a good idea.
I'm told that there's a contingent of their family, the Powell family, that has this thing that happens from time to time where different parts of the family will just show up in other people's lives when they weren't expected. So Eloise, would you come, please? And with you, 3 others who have just showed up unexpectedly in this midst. Ben and Damien and Ian as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ben. I'm Jen's younger cousin. Many family wanted to be here today to celebrate this amazing woman's life. So I'm here to speak, Eloise and I are here to speak on their behalf. Just recently in our family chat, we have this family chat, as many people do, on Facebook. Somebody circulated this great photo of all of us younger cousins up at our family farm. I'm guessing around 1989. I don't know if you've ever tried to get a group of young kids together in a photo, all looking in the right direction and concentrating or at least smiling. But I'm expecting there was at least 5 sets of family members behind the cameraman, all trying to get their attention and that sort of thing. But even then, it wasn't successful. Half the kids are looking off in the right direction, pulling silly faces and that sort of thing. But not Jen. To use Brad's words, she was cool as a cucumber. She had me on her hip here, and she was kind of looking at everyone, kind of like, come on guys, it's not that hard. Keep it together. She seemed to echo this for the next 28 plus years. For many years, I've been in awe at the positivity and the strength that Jen has and seem to inspire in others to live better, to love harder, and to see the beauty in the world. It didn't really matter what obstacle Jen had in her way. She and Brad always seemed to have this amazing optimism and courage. And I know I speak for the rest of the family that we've constantly been inspired by that. She lit up the room with her smile and her laugh, her sense of humor. She had this ability to focus in and engage with you, and you could tell that she really cared about what you had to say. And she loved the people that she had in her world. Hearing stories on behalf of our family in the various ways that Jen has touched their lives over the last few days has been bittersweet. She had such a great impact on people. We feel incredibly blessed to have had Jen in our lives, and we love her.
So as Rusty said, surprise! Now, some of you may have participated or even been the architect of your own surprise party. But let me tell you, our family treat this as a competitive, full contact sport. It could be one family member, or many, passing through on a whistle-stop business trip, or staying for a week. We all delighted in physically turning up for each other in the most unexpected of ways. You could say that surprises are our love language. And if surprises were our family's competitive sport of choice, Jen was our gold medal Olympic champion. In the late 90s, I remember opening my door one day in Brisbane in Queensland to Jen's smiling face, just standing there saying, "Hey." Hey, like she'd just popped around the corner, not flown 9,000 miles to be with her Australian family. I remember closing the door on her in mock horror and shock and hearing her laugh burst out from behind the door. Fast forward to 2015, and she did it to me again. There Jen was, standing in my living room, green eyes sparkling with glee, surprising me for my own wedding day. My uncles and cousins are with me today as a testament to this beautiful and fun-filled tradition, having surprised the rest of the family late on Thursday. We did it because we knew that Jen would have said, "Yes, awesome, let's do it," reveling in the excitement and the role as a co-conspirator. Jen crossed oceans for us so that we could be part of her life. A tradition that evolved over the years to include Brad, Marin, and Greta. Backyard barbecues, sandcastles, farm life, white wine in the sun. The surprises wrapped all of these memories in laughter, adding a vibrancy to what were already special moments. Now we know that Jen also held many roles: wife, sister, niece, friend, cousin. But she also had another extremely important role, and that was as chairwoman and boss-in-chief of the all-seeing, all-powerful, all-knowing, all-drinking, never disclosing, all belly laughs all of the time Council of Cousins. We passed few resolutions, but discussed much. Our governance structure was opaque. Our meeting cadence was inconsistent at best. Our membership was selective, but fated. A shared lineage, whom had the good fortune to be born to loved and loving siblings. We shared beach holidays, we went camping, we celebrated Christmases and birthdays together. Our catch-ups evolved as we matured. Bunk beds and farm breakfasts were exchanged for weddings, travel, and glasses of wine shared in each other's homes. And Jen presided over us all as our leader. It was a benevolent dictatorship, but we loved her for it. The council ranges in age from 23 to 40, so we collectively have decades of memories that have been touched by Jen. As we reminisce together, a couple of key moments stood out. Jen busting a move on a dance floor more than once. Jen as the radiant bride, marrying the wonderful Brad. Such an awe-inspiring moment that a certain 7-year-old cousin felt compelled to write a speech on the spot and deliver a toast to his new wonderfully extended family. Jen as the cool older cousin with Brad, babysitting some equally starstruck younger cousins. There were also a lot of quieter moments, of conversations treasured, the subject matter sometimes lost, no longer remembered, but the feelings endured. I felt heard, they said. She made me feel special. I was seen. It was like there was no one else in the room. We were soothed and challenged and uplifted by her words. Her words are imprinted on our hearts, and they resonate through our minds. As we strive to do our best, we ask ourselves, are we doing today well? Would Jen be proud of me? Our family history is rich and deep. Our stories, too numerous to cover here, are interwoven to form a tapestry of love, laughter, and life. And through it all, there weaves a turquoise thread, bold and bright and strong. It touches so many moments, bringing together a vibrancy to our narrative. It is enduring. We will continue to cross oceans for love. We will listen and speak from the heart. And we will continue to turn up for each other in unexpected ways, because that's how we do today well.
Wow. Well, we have one final element for you before we pull this to a close. And then we want to share a simple ask of you. At the conclusion of the video that you're about to see, the family invites you to exit to the rear into the atrium area. And there you'll find a number of displays. You've seen them already. You'll also find some memory pages. And among them, please take one and find a place around and capture anything. Write down something you remember about Jen, and then drop them in the boxes that are right near the doors. The goal of this, the family's going to take this and going to bind it into a book as a memento to be kept, to be looked at, to be read through, and for those of you who'll visit, probably to see it as well. Again, let me thank you on behalf of the family for coming to this celebration of Jen's life. It's beautiful, isn't it? One day, we'll all face the reality that Jen sees now. For Jen, it came far too early, and none of us have a guarantee. But we do have the opportunity to do what really matters. Jesus summed it up this way: love God with all your heart. Love him with all your soul. Love him with all your mind and with all of your strength. And love your neighbor as yourself. You know, I think that's what Jen meant by do today well. Love today well. And boy, did she. Now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.
Can you see me?
I can see your hand and your Adam's apple and your zippers. I don't think I've ever spent that much time like, that's what happens when Brad's Adam's apple talks.
Can you see me now?
Yeah. One of my favorite Mathie memories of my childhood is that when I was very little, Granddad got a boat. And Nana and Granddad would pack up the coolers, pack up the swimsuits, pack up the towels, pack up the life jackets, and they would take us boating for the day. And so we would boat all day. We'd have picnic lunch on the boat. We'd put on sunscreen 5 times because we were redheads. We had to wear hats. We had to keep our life jackets on when we were on the boat. But man, I remember being whipped around on the tube, and the laughter that I have on the tube, I think, is unlike any laughter that I've had in my whole life. I kind of wish that Meg and Kate and I could all be on camera together and talk, because I think that the dynamic amongst the 3 of us as adults is pretty comical. They would call me the mayor because I was the oldest on all sides of the family, between the Australian relatives and the Cleveland relatives and them. I was the oldest. When we were very little, Meg came to me and asked me to teach her to write her name in cursive. So I taught Meg to write her name in cursive. And I think it's cute, especially when I see Maren and Greta interacting, because they're 4 years apart. And I feel like the dynamic the sweetness between Megan and I is similar to the sweetness between Maren and Greta. And I wish I had made a point to have more of that with Kate. But one of my favorite Kate memories is after I went to Miami, she was still at home. And the first weekend that I came home, she and I sat at the top of the stairs at 5830, which is maybe the only time I've sat at the top of the stairs in 5830 and had a conversation with anybody. But I remember she and I sat there. She was in her Ursuline school uniform, and I was in probably a Miami's t-shirt or sweatshirt, and we just talked about college and her school experience, and it became really fun to come home and see my sisters. And I really have loved the way that our relationships have evolved, you know, from start to finish. And there's two of my best friends now, which is really awesome about sisters. And it's why one of the reasons I'm happy to have 2 daughters. It's really fun to see your kids move into things that are completely independent of you. And as they get older, it's really fun. I'm just really kind of in awe of the little person that she is all by herself. And I think with volleyball, my proudest moment to date was just last weekend when she got cut from a team that she was really hoping to make. And we found out in the morning, and then she had another tryout 2 hours later, and she was real down on herself. So trying to give her the pep talk that everybody goes through this and this is normal, and then to let her go to her room on her own and say, all right, you got 2 hours, like, we're hoping you come back with a happy heart, but it's on you, kiddo. You know, like, she's past the age where I can kiss it and make it better. It's on her now to decide, I got this, and I'm all in, and I'm happy about it. And so it's mind-blowing to me that she's had the maturity to turn that around at 10. And I think that, man, if she can do that for the rest of her life, she's going to have a great life. One of my favorite memories with you was that on Maren's first day of kindergarten, you were just little. You were only 1.5. And so I decided that it would be a good idea to take you up to the school and we could see Maren on her first day of kindergarten. So little Greta and me got to go up to the school, and we went in to say hi and see her classroom. And you saw the little drinking fountain that you could reach, and you thought it was like the coolest thing that you'd ever seen. And you just stood in front of that drinking fountain, and you just wanted to stay there for like all day. It was very fun to go places with you because you saw adventure and everything. I also really like tucking you in at night because you're a big snuggler and you always want one more hug, and you like falling asleep to music, and you like doing your own hair and picking out your own clothes, and you are so much better at it than I am, and you're so much better at it than Maren was at your age, and you just have a real knack for a look and a style that is very Greta, and I love it. There are a lot of fun things that I remember about my mom. When we were little, and for my entire time at home, I remember saying, you know, could we have a friend over or could we play with a friend? And I remember the answer was almost always yes. And we were not that good at picking up. We tried, but we were pretty miserable at it. But I really remember that her answer was always yes for fun. And she never, like, I don't ever remember her saying, like, you're making too much mess while we were playing. One of the biggest compliments that I'm often paid is that I'm a lot like my mom. And I don't know that there's a bigger compliment that people can give me. And the older I get, the more it happens. So I don't know if that's because I'm looking more like her or we're looking more like each other or we're becoming more simpatico as we age. But I'm really proud to be my mother's daughter. My dad's my hero. I think as long as I can remember, I've always felt like the sun rises and sets on Dad's shoulders, and all is right in the world if my dad looks at me and he's proud of me. And I don't think I've ever seen a look in his face that he's not proud of me, which is much more of a testimony to who he is than to who I am. And I love that he picked my name. He picked Jennifer, which I think is cool. I love that he is a good phone talker, and it's very easy to like chat with him on the phone. And he always calls me back and like is interested in what I have going on and always has time for me. I just love that he's a gift giver, and I think that I get that from him, and that's a quality about myself that I think is really fun, and I like it. I like loving people through gifts, and my dad does that at Christmas better than anyone. There have been things that happened in my life that I think are funny, that I fell in love with you when I was 22. We got married when I was 23. I had Maren when I was 26 and Greta when I was 31. And I feel like relative to a lot of people in our life stage and our friends and family and stuff, we did a lot of things like fast and furious and early. And I feel like, you know, we went to Europe for our 7.5-year anniversary instead of some big round number. And I'm really proud of the way that I think that we lived authentically to who we were. I made a great choice in who I married, and you call out the best in me, and you began doing that when I was 22. And so I think that that gave us like such a leg up in maturity and hope and fun, and I think we came together with a lot less baggage than lots of older people do. So the whole of my adult life, I've been in love with you. And, you know, that jump start that we had was the right thing no matter what happened. But the fact that I got cancer at 32 and the diagnosis that I have, I'm really proud of myself for doing today well. I think I do cancer really well, and I'm really proud of that. And it's a lot of work to do it well. But it's also super rewarding to really try to be the best version of yourself every day. And in some ways, cancer made me drop a lot of treasures that I had. You know, fitness and freedom, and, you know, when everything is kind of stripped away and you're looking at like the bare minimum of what really matters to me, I now have the luxury, when I feel better and when I have the capacity to kind of look around and survey the scene, and I get to decide which ones do I actually want to pick up and what's the most important. And I think that the fierceness that I commit to trying to pick up only the most important and treasured things is a position of privilege that few people are forced to execute. So it comes out of a hardship, but it is its own privilege and pleasure to live life in a way that is legacy-based and super intentional. Every dream I've ever had has come true. And there's not a lot of people that can say that at the age of 38. So I'm so blessed, and I'm so happy with my life. And I know I'm written on the hearts of my people. I really like that the things that I invest in are really real. And I really think that everyone I invest in, and a lot of those treasures are people that I pick up, but I really think that everybody that I invest in knows that I love them deeply.
know you